Welcome to today's Farm Life. I'm Doug Cunningham. Today we're going to start the topic of data security. There's a lot of things we could talk about, a lot of issues we could go on for a long time, but we're going to focus in on surveillance cameras or video cameras and how they're being used more and more as a tool around the farm, whether it's in the calving barn or whether to watch your fuel barrel or whatever. We're going to talk about how those are secure or possibly not secure. Talked with Paul Claggett with Eternal Securities Products. He tells me that many producers don't even realize that there are backdoors or portals that could lead right straight to your data. You don't even know about it.
This camera is an IP camera. It can look like a teddy bear. It can be really tiny. It can be huge. It can have zoom lenses. It can be anything, but it's an IP camera. That can be wireless back to your network. It can be wired back to your network. Once that's to the network, this camera doesn't matter if it's in Tokyo, if it's in Boston, or if it's in your barn. Because they're on the internet, these people don't care what they're hitting. There are programs out where they can search public IPs. Once they search the public IPs, then they start looking for holes. They look for ports that are open. They look for identification MAC addresses. Once they find a MAC address, they can typically search that back to the product, and then they'll try default passwords. They'll try simple passwords. Passwords typically shouldn't have things like your address in. Your usernames should not say the Carlsons. We just want to try to make it a little more difficult, and if it's difficult, those people typically are lazy and they'll go somewhere else.
According to Claggett, as we approach the busy season, now is actually a good time to take a step back and maybe ask yourself a few questions about your system. Is it going to meet my upcoming needs? And is it safe?
Start out by investigating it. Is first look at your router. If your router says it is a X204, you can do an internet search. In an internet search, it typically will tell you what the default passwords are, what the default wireless is. If you pull that up and it's still that number, and you put in the passwords and the username, and it opens up to that page, you're at risk. And most anybody who comes in, whether they're a computer technician, whether they're your internet provider coming in to assist with a problem, change a router out, whatever, they'll look at that and just ask them, are we safe? Do we have any WP additional protection? Is there anything that we can add to it without causing us a big inconvenience and doesn't stop our equipment from working, but gives us another level of just thinking that we're safer.
Claggett told me that there are a number of ways that your data is transferred back and forth and looked at by a number of people that many producers don't even realize. We need to be aware of who's looking at what.
You're driving down the road in your tractor, and you get a message that you have to have this service, that this is an issue or that's an issue. If you look at that technology, what else is it looking at? Who could use that again as a backdoor to come through and get to other information? And again, it can be through anything. If you've got an IP, if it's tied to your network, if it's tied to the internet, there's always that chance that something could happen. We just need to be aware.
According to Claggett, data is the most important asset we have, but you should not run scared of all the new technology. You simply need to take the steps needed to protect your data and protect your identity.
We don't want to have people terrified, but in the last 10 years, things have changed. In the last 20 years, things have really changed. So, keeping in mind things like if you put a camera into the room that you write checks at, you don't want that. You don't want, you might want a safe covered, but you don't want the dial covered. just little things like that that you have to think about as far as placement. And again, I'm not trying to terrify somebody. I'm not trying to say you need to go grab a bunch of money and go buy something from someone. But this is a thought pattern that needs to be started. And again, whether it's just a simple door cam, something on the driveway, just to give you and your family a little more peace of mind. And yes, there are things that go bad. The other thing that's nice about, if everybody would have at least one camera, when something bad happens in your neighborhood or happens down the street, maybe you're the one that can provide that 2-second clip of video that will stop them from having it happen to somebody else.
Wow, that is a lot of technical information to think about and to process. One thing that I agree with Paul is that don't run scared from the technology. Just be aware of some of the weak links in your system. Have them checked, have them looked at. If you have questions, contact your IT professional, maybe even your internet provider. They could possibly help you find those weak links. Be sure and watch part 2. We're going to dive into video cameras, a little more detail about how to use cameras, how to double use cameras. When you're not using them in one spot, you can use them in a different spot. Just all depends on where you have them located when you have them installed. Be sure and watch part 2 of our data security part 2 right here at today'sfarmlife.com. And remember, feel good about what you do, because what you do today is very important. Until next time, I'm Doug Cunningham.